Hey everyone, happy Thursday, May 1st. It's a little bit before 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and it's time for another market update. It was another week where the markets are still distracted by tariffs. What's going to happen there? Will there be trade deals? Not much to report there. Like I said before, a lot of the problem is there is no answer. We don't know exactly what's going to happen as far as how those deals might take place, if there will be deals, if the tariffs stay in place, how that's going to affect things. So right now the market's not liking that, but not much to report there. But this week there was a lot of data that affects mortgage rates and real estate. So I'm going to try to get through all of this as quickly as I can for you guys. And really the first thing that came up, the main thing that was driving the markets this week and saw a lot of articles about was we got our first look at Q1, quarter one for 2025's GDP, our gross domestic product for the United States, and it came in negative. It came in down a negative 0.3%. It was supposed to be up 0.3%. But it came in negative. So, I think this is the first negative month or a negative quarter since 2021. As you can see, going back to Q3 or Q2 2023, all positive prints. And again, when this came out, you saw a lot of headlines and articles about are we in a recession? Are we going into a recession? That kind of thing. Like we've talked about before, recession for mortgage rates generally, historically is a good thing. Mortgage rates tend to come down during a recession, and home prices, besides 2008, tend to either stay flat or go up during a recession. So it's not the worst thing there. And really, why this was a positive for mortgage rates and not necessarily a bad thing for our end of that stuff is that the Fed's looking at how our economy's doing, how the labor market's doing, how inflation's doing. So the better our economy's doing, the more it's booming, the less the Fed thinks they need to do anything. They can keep rates higher because our economy is doing great. With this number coming in lower, this is one of those things that can kind of make the Fed think, well, hey, we don't want to go into recession. Maybe we should cut rates to stimulate the economy. So that's why that one was kind of received well by us, not necessarily stocks, but on the bond side of stuff. Next thing we got was the March PCE inflation numbers. So keep in mind, this is the Fed. This is their favorite form of inflation to look at, especially the core number, which takes out food and energy costs, which they don't think they can control as much. And this came in flat month over month in both the core and the headline. Year over year, we're at, for the headline now, we're down to 2.3%. That's this these orange red line, and the core, which takes out the food and energy, we're down to 2.6%. So nice little downward trend. But keep in mind, tariffs really haven't taken effect in these numbers yet. So, once tariffs start kicking in, the thought from a lot of economists and experts in this is we'll see these numbers tick up. We don't want that to happen. We know the Fed wants this blue line to get down closer to 2% to keep inflation under control. So the negative would be, hey, inflation starts ticking up. The Fed says, we don't want inflation to come back, roaring back like it was before, so we can't cut rates. So that's why, although, it looks like it came down, we look like we're in a good trend with tariffs on the horizon. People are worried about it. Saw a lot of articles talking about that with inflation. So not the worst number, but also not the best, and a little bit higher than I actually expected. Jobs week. So it's jobs week on top of everything else. It's also jobs week. We get all the big jobs reports. First one, JOLTS job openings came in light. It came in, it was supposed to be about 7.48 million job openings across the country. Came in about 7.192 million. So the reason that is a good thing for us is, if there's less job openings, people are hiring less. It looks like maybe employers are pulling back a little bit on that front. That is a sign, for the Fed, like, hey, the job market's weakening, the economy's weakening. So that's something good for us, I guess. ADP, this is private payrolls. This came in light. It was supposed to be about 115,000 new jobs created according to ADP. It came in at 62,000 and about half of last month, which was actually revised down lower. So again, on top of that JOLTS report, shows some weakness in the job report. JOLTS was March, and that ADP number is actually April, so a little fresher. And then tomorrow we get the big BLS jobs report for the month of April. Right now it's supposed to come in somewhere between 130 and 140,000 jobs created. Unemployment rate supposed to stay at 4.2%, but that's the big one. If this comes in light as well, then on top of these, on top of GDP, that's a real sign to the Fed, like, hey, job market slowing, economy slowing. You guys are going to have to start seriously thinking about cutting here shortly. If it comes in stronger than expected, that could, the BLS job report's strong. Who cares about ADP? Who cares about GDP? So that's why all those stuff are important. We want inflation low. We want jobs not to be as hot. And then, if the economy is showing signs of slowing, that's when the Fed will cut. If the economy looks like it's doing great, if jobs look like they're doing great, and inflation starts ticking up, that's when the Fed will not cut. In a worst case scenario, they could even possibly raise again. Next thing we got home appreciation. So there's two big home appreciation reports we get every month. This is for the month of March. We get the Case Shiller, which is the gold standard, and then we can also get the FHFA report. Case Shiller came in at year over year, it's at homes are appreciating at a 4.5% rate. That's this red line right here. FHFA, which takes out jumbo loans, which takes out cash deals, so tends to be lower price homes. That came in at plus 3.9% year over year. So both were lower than the previous month. Both were lower a little bit than expectations. They're still appreciating. It's not depreciating. It's just the rate of growth is slowing a little bit. And then I thought this graph was interesting. This is NAR's median listing price compared to Case Shiller. And obviously they don't sync up completely, but obviously there's a correlation. You can see maybe the NAR stuff is a little bit more volatile, where the Case Shiller stays a little bit more steady. But it's interesting to see these side by side. Good for current homeowners. Your homes are still appreciating. Not good for people that want to see home prices dropping. Home prices, until we see big drops in the listings, we won't see appreciation start turning negative. Next thing we got March pending home sales. So these are homes that went pending. They haven't closed yet, but they went pending in the month of March. This was a big jump. It jumped 6.1%, really big jump. It's still down year over year compared to the last March, 0.6%. But it was nice to see some positive movement there. Led by the South, every region, including us in the West, gained except for the Northeast. They were down by 0.5%. But overall, good to see there. With elevated mortgage rates, this would probably be pending. Tariffs didn't go in effect till I think April 4th. So before those went in effect, it'll be interesting to see what April has in store for us to see if there was that anxiety about buying a home or just anxiety over the tariffs, to pull back a little bit, not as much activity. But as far as we can see, great number for March to see that jump. Next thing, initial jobless claims. So jobless claims are important because we know, just like all the other job stuff, this is something the Fed's looking at. This is probably going to be the first sign we get of real weakness. If all of a sudden these start spiking, we know people are getting laid off, they're filing for unemployment. This was a beat this time. It came in, expectation was about 224. It's been kind of that 220 to 210 range for quite a while. Came in at 241. So this could have to do, from my understanding, with some New York seasonal stuff with education. I think school jobs. So it'll be interesting to see what next week's does. But it did jump, so that is something that initially the markets like today. And then there's some manufacturing data that the markets did not like. So where does that leave us? The average 30-year conventional rate when last week was about 6.9. We're about 6.83 today. Again, keep in mind this is the average rate. I wouldn't even pay attention to this number because everybody's situation is way different. You don't know how much they're charging you to get to this rate. You don't know what this is. Really top end borrowers. What your credit score is. What type of house you're buying can make a difference. What part of the country you're buying a house. All that stuff can make a difference. But where it's nice to take a look at is the change. So if you were a 7.25 last week, you're probably getting closer to that 7.15 or so. So just as far as the changes, it's a one way to keep track of at least where things are heading. And we're kind of staying the same place we have been, kind of these higher sixes for quite a while now. We made that move towards 6.5. We've jumped over 7, but overall we've kind of stayed in this 6.8, 6.7 range. Important dates. Tomorrow, like I said, we get the BLS jobs reports. Next week, we get the Fed. They meet. They announce if they're going to be, cutting rates, keeping rates where they're at. Right now, the markets are saying they're keeping rates where they're at. So if anybody needs anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, have a great week, everybody. Thanks a lot.